Hi, Terry Pearce here at Untold Play. Welcome back to my series on learning from games. Today I'm going to be looking at Crusader Kings 3, which is a really interesting, quite complex computer game about the sweep of history and about ruling a dynasty. So you take charge of a dynasty, you take charge of a person in charge of that dynasty, but then also their heir. And obviously you can see on the screen now the map. I'm actually the Empire of Hispania. My current ruler within that is this chap here, Emperor Salvador the Anointed of Hispania. So there's lots going on here. I'm not going to explain everything to you that's going on, but what I'm really interested in trying to show to you today about this game is the way that it models a system of how the world worked, and particularly how ruling a country or an empire worked at that time. So it's got all kinds of things going on around the empire itself and all of the different territories that make it up. So we've got titles and claims. So, there's the Kingdom of Portugal, which is part of my empire, or there's the Kingdom of Leon. And then it talks, it's got a system modelled about who is in the line of succession for each of those different places. And there's all kinds of things that go on with people competing and changing the line of succession and claims to that line of succession, which means, for instance, that if I go to my court, my court here, then I have all these courtiers who, some of them have useful claims, and I could try and press that claim. Or, for instance, if I look at my council here, then my patriarch, my kind of religious leader there, could, if I wanted him to, fabricate a claim, kind of make up an on-paper claim for a particular place that I might want to claim as my own. So there's all these things that are modelling ways that things worked in history. And I have to tell you that in my history lessons, I was not a keen scholar, let's say. I barely remember these huge long lists of kings and queens and then different ways to remember what happened to all of them. But it wasn't something I took a big interest in. It seemed quite dull. But what this game does is it gets to the bottom of how it worked, and it puts you as a player in the middle of it. So you have to decide what you're going to do with all of that. I'll show you a couple more of the systems just to kind of round the picture out a little bit. So, for instance, if we think about religion and faith, this has a system to model that, and it has a system to model what are the tenets of the religion that you're a part of, and if you get high enough in that religion, you can seek to change those or even create a new faith. So there's ways that faith impacts the people in your realm in this game. There's also things around your lifestyle, so the things that you as a ruler and your family specialize in. So at the moment, there's these different options for different kinds of lifestyles, and I have really focused on the learning lifestyle because my leader, my king at the moment, it's going beyond king, emperor, has been a religious leader. So has kind of, done all these different things which are to do with learning and religion. But then there are different ones around intrigue, where if you specialize in that, then, you're manipulating and using your cunning, or martial, where your skills help your realm towards war. And there's all these options that you get through the game to do certain things there. There's also a really interesting system around stress, where your character has certain characteristics. So if I look again at my character, we can see that I'm deceitful, brave, greedy, and zealous. And every so often through the game, I'll get different options of how to, for instance, educate a child or ward of mine, or what to do at a feast. And if I do things that are consistent with those personality traits, then I may reduce my stress levels. But if I do things that are inconsistent with those personality traits, then I increase my stress levels. So there's a system that's modelling quite well, I think, actually, how stress can work in real life. So, and again, there's so much to this game, but what I'm just trying to show here is all the different ways in which there are a number of different systems that kind of interlock, because they all kind of affect each other. Which decisions I make because I don't want to increase my stress is going to affect how my subjects feel about me, which then may impact the system that's all about, do they rebel, for instance. So there's all these interlocking systems, and it models the world. And what that allows the game to do, and this is the really interesting part, I think, is it allows the game to be very open-ended. So it's modeling a system and you choose your own goals. So there is no overarching goal. You could choose to try and conquer the entire globe. It's pretty difficult. But you don't have to choose that. You could choose to try and establish a very prosperous place, or there are certain kind of missions and different things that you can try and do within the game. Like you can try and establish a certain kind of dynasty, or found universities in the world, or it's some particular parts of the world. So there are all these different aims that you can have, and none of them are really part of things. You've got to work out for yourself, which is the one you're going for right now or overall. And it's quite motivational like that. And you build up a story of your character. I've seen people on bulletin boards on the internet just talking about the story of their character and the way their empire developed, and having conversations about that. And people, including myself, get quite enthused about that. So you might be looking at this and thinking, well, if I'm not producing a commercial video game with a high level of complexity and quality like this, what does this have to teach me about learning games and so on? But actually, I don't think we need to model a system in quite this much complexity in order to get something really useful in terms of learning. If we're just modeling quite a simple system, such as the way talent moves through an organization, for instance, or the way that different things change the productivity levels of a team or a project. I think if we start to try and model those systems with elements within a game, even if they're really simple elements, even if they're much, much simpler than what we're seeing on the screen here, and we leave it kind of open-ended, then that's a slightly different approach to games than the traditional, we're competing to reach a common goal, and at that common goal, the game ends. If you try and design a game, a learning game, so that it just simulates the system, and then leave it to the players to say, what is the point of the game? What do I want to do with it? So long as it starts to model reality, then they can start to get enthusiastic about that. They can play that. They can work that out. And even if it doesn't model it perfectly, then the difference is the places it falls short of being a perfect model of reality can, I think, make for really great discussion points. People can say, well, life isn't quite like that. And you can say, okay, well, how is it different? And what can we learn from that? So I think there are some great things you can do with modeling systems. And I think that Crusader Kings 3 is a great example of that, done maybe to its best possible extent. But again, I don't think that we need to do it to quite that extent, or quite a level of complexity or cost or time, in order to get some really good things going with learning games or gamified solutions to learning problems. We just need to start to think in that slightly different way, and perhaps model a system of the thing we're trying to learn about, and allow the players to explore that and set goals for themselves, perhaps. So that's what I've got to say to Crusader Kings 3 and what we can learn from it today on the Learning from Games series. I hope that's been useful to you. I'd really love for you to comment on the video, to subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. And if you do comment, tell me what you think. If you have suggestions for future games that you think would be great to feature here, then I'd love to hear those as well. I've been Terry at Untold Play. Thank you very much.